My name is Alnisa Allgood. My story is called An Atypical Journey, and it's the story of how becoming an Air Force officer influenced, I guess, my commitment to community organizing. My name is Alnisa Allgood. I am the founder and executive director of Nonprofit Tech, a technology consultancy that I started back in 1997. I am also the founder and executive director of Collaboration for Good, which is a dual focus community nonprofit organization, and we're working to reshape the face of entrepreneurship and to increase the region's capacity for social good. And my path to becoming that led me through the United States Air Force. Basically, I started, I'm gonna have to backtrack a little bit here, but I started off with in the junior ROTC program in high school. And how I got there was, I come from a family of 6 kids. My dad, mom and dad, my dad died when I was 7, so back in 1975. No, I was 6 in 1975. And I have a really older brother and then a younger brother who is younger than me, but the rest of our family stacks up on each other. So I'm the youngest daughter, then there's a brother, sister, another brother. And the only reason why that's important is in first grade, they were going to pass me up, but you can't get passed up more than 2 grades, and you can't get passed up into a grade level that your siblings are in. So for them to pass me up, they would have had to pass me up to 5th grade from first grade, which wasn't going to happen, but kind of put the seed in my head of I didn't want to go to the same high school as my brothers and sisters. And as I was looking at that and went to junior high, that was of the era when there were junior highs and not whatever they're doing right now. When I was in the first year of junior high, which is the 6th grade, a chief staff sergeant came over to talk about the junior ROTC program that was at the newly minted West Side High School. There used to be only one school or a private school in Warren, Ohio, which is where I'm from, and that's kind of in the heart of steel mill country between Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Youngstown, Ohio, and Cleveland, Ohio. And as you can imagine, or what you know from history is steel died, as well as like a lot of the towns around that. So I'm not quite certain how they managed to build a new high school at the same time that the steel community was dying. But it was an opportunity for me. The East Side High School not only had all my brothers and sisters in it, but also had most predominantly vocational programs, because in Warren, Ohio, you went into the steel mill or you enlisted into the military. When the sergeant came over and he talked about what the junior ROTC program was, it's not a pipeline, junior ROTC. It's not a pipeline into the Air Force, but a lot of people use it to go into the military. It really actually focuses more on leadership development, civic responsibility, and kind of giving back to the community. And for them, that's a lot of giving back to military, other veterans and stuff like that. So I signed up for it because it got me over to the West Side School. It actually got me focused in on a number of things that I found very interesting, and then taught me a slew of things that I hadn't even thought about. So when you start in the high school version of the program, you start learning aeronautical science, military history, drill and ceremony, and I joined the color guard, the honor guard, and the drill and ceremony team, basically. Both my sergeant and my lieutenant took me under the wings. I quickly went from being an airman, which is basically one bar enlisted type personnel to being a lieutenant colonel by my junior year, and basically being in command of, my class for that. But my big goal into joining the Air Force then is because I come from a family, nobody went to college. No one was encouraging you to go to college. You went into the military or you joined the steel mill. So conversations around college was really just more about, why are you wasting your time thinking about that type of stuff? So this was kind of like my little alternative path. It's like, look, it's still the military, but I get to go to school as well. But I was also incredibly naive, and the counselors in high school didn't really help all that much. They knew I wanted to go to college, but they didn't really. I think there was just the separation of what they're used to kids knowing about college because their parents went or things like that. So they basically started off with, here's some scholarships you could apply for, but they didn't actually talk about how do you get into college, how do you blah, blah, blah. So the Air Force really kind of helped me with that. But what they didn't tell me is that an Air Force scholarship is way more competitive than your average full rides. And so I did get my Air Force scholarship for chemical engineering to go to college. And I got 4 other full ride scholarships at the same time, which would have been nice to know, but I'm not quite certain if it would have changed my direction at that period of time. I did enjoy being part of the Air Force there, and doing the junior ROTC got me advanced time on the time we need to do for the Air Force Reserve, which kicked in earlier my commitment in the reserve and spilled me over into active Air Force time. When later in college I came out, this was before Don't Ask, Don't Tell, and I don't know how much you might know about what it takes to become an officer, but officers typically are never enlisted people. There's almost no pathways for you if you go into the military as an enlisted person to ever become an officer. There's a few, and from what I've heard is that during the Afghanistan war, I guess, or was it the Iraq war, they opened up a few more, but I think those are closed again. But typically speaking, once you've become an enlisted, you're trained to follow orders and stuff like that, so they don't feel like that you can ever become an officer. I call it the dual society of it's kind of like a class type of systems. It's like how the stock market makes the rich richer and doesn't really do anything for the middle class and the poor. So boot camps and stuff like that are not typical as part of your training for an officer. If you're at one of the academies, you're living your military life 24/7 at the academies for the most part, except for times off. So in some ways that's its own worse version of a boot camp, but at the same time you're still being trained to be a leader of a squadron, a platoon, and things like that. And so the boot camp, you do kind of your regular exercises. You learn how to fire a gun, rifle, basic combat and stuff like that. But most of your other training is really about politics and making decisions. How do you make decisions that take care of the people that are up under you? And how do you support them in their process and their career, which kind of coincided very well with what I wanted to do with the nonprofit sector and social good work. And I was already doing some of that work in college as well. My derailment on that path came when around 1920, I actually decided that I wanted to start dating, and I came out, which was kind of fine to a degree, because apparently my commanders and even my high school people knew before I did, and they were giving me tips and tricks, but I actually just thought they were giving me subtle warnings about being a Black woman, officer as opposed to being a lesbian in like the military. So I came out and lost my scholarship. Ended up being homeless for about 6 months. I was still in school because the rest of the school year was covered, and I just then had to find other scholarships. And and that was my bad. I made the decision that I wasn't really going to hide that much. I wasn't going to ask any shout it out from the things, but I was doing community organizing work, and I had put together this pretty large event that had like 2,000 to 3,000 people in attendance on the campus, and I was speaking, and then I identified myself as, it's like, this campus isn't safe for women as a Black lesbian. And it was highly publicized. So yeah, and so that was kind of like the shifting point for me in terms of that. I was still at school at that period of time, but I was no longer in the military. My officers, as I mentioned, were really nice. They actually worked to make sure I did not get dishonorably discharged, and they worked to make sure that I actually got active duty for the combined 4 years of high school and 2 years of college work. So it ended up being like something like 5 years of reserve and like a year of active duty, which actually gave me both a discharge from the Air Force Reserve and then the Air Force simultaneously. And then I was working full-time the entire time I was in college. And the biggest difference for me at that period of time, and the reason why I came homeless, is that I was sending all of the money that I was working home to take care of my mom and my younger brother, and she was also taking care of one of my nieces at that period of time. So I was only giving myself like $100 per $150 per month for things that I needed because I had food and housing. I lived on campus and stuff. And so then it became a rapid decision, is like, am I stopping sending my mom money, which could make her and my brother and everybody else homeless? Or do I become homeless and just take more time to save up money? And so if you're going to be homeless, being homeless while in college is probably the best time to do it. I had student access to most of the buildings and places that I could hide and sleep. I didn't actually have to put I didn't have that much stuff because I lived in the dorms. So I put my stuff in like dorm storage and spent like an abnormal amount of time at the engineering building and the library there. But what the military kind of taught me at that stage is that you have to kind of roll with the punches for it. Most things work out if you work at them. And it gave me a lot more expertise in terms of organizing people, organizing events, caring about the people who you're working with and that you're working for. And that was my atypical military journey. Thank you for listening to my story on how I became an atypical Air Force officer.